The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army. And now, ladies and gentlemen,
You're now about to witness the truth.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Well, Happy New Year and welcome to the first episode of the Benjamin Dixon Show for 2017. I almost said 2016. Thank you so much for joining us. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you decided to spend some time with us, and I really do appreciate it. Most of you are still on vacation, so I don't expect a large number of people to be calling in tonight. However, I will always keep my phone lines open, 857-600-0518. Tonight, I should be interviewing, and I'll get a confirmation here shortly, Dwight Bullard. He is running for the Florida Democratic Party state. I can never remember the actual state committee man. So for the Miami-Dade chapter, I don't get titles right all the time. So but his race has been nationalized, so to speak, in terms of the significance and the scope, and somewhat of a bellwether for the Democratic Party because of his battle against Stephen Biddle or Battelle, depending on how you pronounce it. So anyway, we spoke last week or the week before with Wendy Sejour, who is a activist in the area, and she came on and spoke on behalf of that race, and we invited Dwight to come on, so he's going to be joining us momentarily, and then we'll speak with him when he gets on to discuss that. I want to thank, before I get too deep into it, I have to stop and thank our patrons. 100% have to thank you. Thank you so much for being with us through 2016 to 2017. And to be honest with you, when I started the show, I literally started talking to about two people, and that was my brother, who was the producer, and my sister, who called in and did a fake voice, and I didn't know it was her, and I was all excited. I was like, hell yeah, my very first episode, and I've got somebody calling in. And later on to find out that it was just my sister. I don't know if she's trying to make me feel good or try to test my phone lines. Either way, we've come a mighty long way, and in between 2016 to 2017, we've gotten over 100 and some odd patrons. I believe it's like 125 at this point, who make the show possible. So thanks so much to each of you, and thanks to you who just watch and listen every night. I know there's a lot of you who never, who can't. Right? Some of you just expressed to me that times are just that hard, and I believe it, because I've been. When I say I've been there, I have literally been exactly there, where I could not spare $5 a month, like straight up and down. So I totally get that, and don't put that at the feet of anybody. But if you just listen and share the videos, I definitely appreciate you. We appreciate you here, and it's more than just me. That's the other thing. This is the Progressive Army, and we thank you. We thank you for supporting us, sharing the articles. It's a new year. We're getting ready to do some great things, some big things. We're going to keep pushing and pressing. The website is growing. Our audience is growing. Our impact, our reach is growing, and it's all because of you. Enough of that. Let's talk about the news. Let's talk first about Donald J. Trump and Kim Jong-un. So Kim Jong-un has had for some time nuclear ambitions for North Korea, and he said in his inaugural New Year's address, he declared that the country would soon be testing an intercontinental ballistic missile. He said that they will soon be testing an intercontinental ballistic missile, and these missiles have a long enough range for them to threaten the U.S. mainland territory in theory. And it's a major step forward, according to Eric Talmadge of the AP Associated Press. It's a major step forward. Obviously, ICBMs is always a big step forward for nuclear ambitions. This is Kim Jong-un's 5th year as a leader. He's picked up right where his dad left off, and this was in his Sunday's New Year's Eve address to the nation. So clearly, this is Kim Jong-un speaking to the world, and not so much his people. His people are starving. his people would probably benefit from spending all the money that he's spending on nuclear ambitions on food and their economy. But I digress. So he's speaking to the world, letting the world know that he has nuclear, not only nuclear ambitions, but they've built a bomb and now they're looking to get ICBMs. He said that after preparations for launching an ICBM have reached the final stage. And according to his speech, it said, quote, "The political and military position of socialism should be further cemented as an invisible fortress. We should resolutely smash the enemy's despicable and vicious moves to dampen the pure and ardent desire of the people for the party and estrange the people from it." I don't know what the hell that kind of word salad, what the fuck that even means. Sorry, but he sounds like the madman that he is. He dropped socialism in there. They're no more a socialist state than China is a communist state, but they are an isolated state. And that's what makes them dangerous. They have very little to lose. The people are poor. They are isolated from the international community. Their only ally is China, which is a powerful ally. And this is where it ties in more directly with Donald Trump. But being an isolated state means that they are less bound to international norms and international stipulations and expectations. We can't look at Kim Jong-un and North Korea as rational actors because they have no vested interest in the international order through which we interpret whether or not someone is rational. You know, we could say that Vladimir Putin is rational because he has a vested interest in the international order. Even though the international order is not the order that the USSR and the KGB and he would have liked during the Cold War, but it is an international order that the oligarchy of Russia has bought into. So we can kind of count on Russia being rational actors. We can count on China being rational actors. They've accepted the international norm. They're getting tremendously wealthy out of the international norms. North Korea is extremely poor, has nothing to benefit from their isolation from this international order. Therefore, we cannot expect them to be rational actors whatsoever. Madman with a nuclear weapon. Not much, well, hyperbolically speaking, not much different than Donald Trump. We'll see how much of a madman he is going to be. So Donald Trump tweets about it. Speaking of, we'll talk about Donald Trump and his damn tweets. Donald Trump, let me write that down before I forget about it. Donald Trump tweets about it, saying that North Korea just stated that it is in the final stages of developing a nuclear weapon capable of reaching parts of the U.S. It won't happen, exclamation point. Then he went on to say in another tweet, China has been taking out massive amounts of money and wealth from the U.S. in totally one-sided trade, but won't help with North Korea. Nice. Yeah. So yeah, China is the only North Korean ally. They are a firm supporter of the country. So it's very likely that if Trump wants a trade war with China, they will be less inclined to cooperate in assisting with North Korea. In actuality, China is probably the only player in the region, in the world, that could put pressure on North Korea. They have not shown a willingness or desire to do so. But as Donald Trump gets ready to come in, and really, it's not just Donald Trump, right? There's a lot of players in the region who have a vested interest in North Korea not getting a weapon. Let's just start there. Now, Donald Trump clearly inflames the situation. Donald Trump clearly has lit the fire underneath a nuclear Cold War, a nuclear arms race, rather. And to the extent that Donald Trump's or the United States expansion of nuclear weapons actually affects the decision making of North Korea, that remains to be seen. But the entire environment around nuclear weapons has been completely turned upside down because of the insanity of Donald Trump. So we can't disconnect the two. However, it's really difficult to draw a direct line between, well, you can't. I don't believe that we could draw a direct line between Donald Trump's tweets on nuclear expansion and North Korea's ambition. But it has created an instability, an unstable factor. And so to that end, there are plenty of powers in the region, or rather not to that end, but anyway, there are plenty of other actors in the region who have a vested interest in North Korea not getting an ICBM. China is going to have to play ball on this. Now, here's the thing. In so many ways, unless we're willing to actually go to war with someone, we can't stop them from getting a nuclear weapon. Period. Let's just make that abundantly clear. Unless we are willing and able to go to war with someone, with a nation, we are not really capable of stopping their nuclear program. This is why the Iran deal was necessary, because all it does is buys us time to bring Iran into the fold, into the international order. We can't stop them unless we're willing to go to war with them. We do have an incoming administration that is more prone to go to war. Fuck the ramifications. Shit, we're in Iraq still. We're in Afghanistan still. They don't care about that shit because the next Democratic president will take responsibility for it. So we do have an administration that's more willing to go to war, and it is a legitimate threat if China does nothing about it. I am interested in seeing how this plays out. Honestly, I'm not going to make a call on this in terms of how I think it's going to play out. I have no idea how it's going to play out. But if we were to do some quote unquote game theory, we would, it's such an inside Twitter joke. But anyway, if we were to play this out, Donald Trump's willingness to go to war could pressure China to put pressure on North Korea. But Donald Trump's willingness to get into a trade war with China could make China be like, deal with it. So really don't know how this plays out, except for it's a strong possibility that North Korea will get nuclear weapons. Now, on the flip side, perhaps this is a rational action, and I've heard a lot of people argue this. Perhaps this is a rational action from North Korea. They've got nothing else. They've got nothing to lose except their lives, and they're already, half the nation is starving in abject poverty. They've clearly, at least the leadership has clearly calculated into their calculus the reality that their actions could lead to war. But I mean, how much more devastated could they? I mean, I guess dead versus devastated is a different measure. But I said all that to say, perhaps this isn't rational action from them. Perhaps them having a nuclear weapon. I'm not advocating for it. I'm just placing myself before anybody runs off and say, "Oh, Ben's advocating for North Korea." Please, we don't be intentionally obtuse. I'm trying to place myself in the role and thinking of how North Korea can actually think this is rational, right? Instead of us just assuming that they're insane. Because if we make the assumption and leave it there that they're insane, then the only way you could deal with an insane person on the international stage, or insane or irrational actor, is through brute force, right? So if we try to place ourselves in the role of North Korea and see what the hell they're thinking they've got nothing to lose. They're thinking they can gain more respect in the international community, and not just respect for the sake of respect us, but respect in the sense of listen to our demands. This is what we want. This is what we expect. They feel like this is going to bring some type of prestige, and with prestige comes economic influence. They feel like that's going to be their route to entering the international order. The question is then, the only thing that really matters, save any type of conflict from Donald Trump taking us to war or whatever, putting all that aside, let's just look at it, a very simple equation between North Korea and getting a weapon. The only real question about North Korea getting a weapon is whether or not they're regime change actors. And by regime change, I mean, are they looking to change the international order through their nuclear weapons? Or are they looking to gain access to the international order with their nuclear weapons? In other words, are they using this as a foray, as an entrance into becoming a part of the international community? I can think of the 1,200 other ways they could do that, but perhaps they think this is the most rational way for them to get inside of the international community. Or are they saying they want to rewrite the international order to match something that fits their political ideological tilt? If that's what they want, then we do have a problem on our hand, and the only way to stop them is through force, and that doesn't play out well. So, again, I think the best parallel is with Iran. The people who created the Iran deal clearly believe or have some reason and expectation to believe that delaying Iran's nuclear ambitions for 10 years, which is about all we're doing is delaying it, and relinquishing the sanctions, right? Taking the sanctions off and giving them an opportunity to enjoy wealth and to enjoy a growing and booming economy, that the mindsets of the people will change such that they will become a part of the international order who has a vested interest in not blowing some shit up. The real question is, does North Korea want that, or do they want to change things? And then the second most important, or the very first most important question is, to what extent is Donald Trump actually willing to take us into a conflict with North Korea? Because the only way we're going to stop their nuclear ambitions is by pretty much destroying them. And I don't think it matters if we have the political will as a people. Donald Trump is not going to be 1% concerned about what the American people want like Obama was. Obama didn't take us into Syria because he was actually concerned about what the American people said. Donald Trump is not going to give two shits about that. Donald Trump is going to do whatever makes him feel like he has the bigger dick in the conversation because his hands are so small. So we have a really volatile situation ahead of us. 857-600-0518 if you want to join the conversation. So that's what's happening in the around the nation. It's what's happening in your neck of the woods. Sorry, I grew up on the Today Show. I just had a flashback. Caller, you're live on the air. I'm just meandering at this point. What do you want? No, I'm sorry. What's your name, comment, and/or question?
Hey, man, it's Bryce.
What's up, man? What's on your mind?
You're fine. So the only thing that Trump is right about, which is, I can't believe I'm saying this, is that China has kind of dropped the ball on the situation. China kind of been like, we want to do something, but really don't care. Well, we kind of, control, the U.S. in the sense of the products and stuff that we do. So we don't want them to get destroyed. So, if North Korea really wants to do something, we'll get involved. Other than that, we just let them do them, and it is what it is, and we got control. And it's like a game. And then it's like, Trump and this right-wing government they want to go to war and do all this crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And that's, the Iran deal was so important. And, of course, the right-wing Republicans got all mad, and, he's turning our back on Israel. No, they're not. No, we're not. We gave them $38 billion.
Yeah.
$38 billion, and we can't even freaking give them $40 a flat. So we gave them $38 billion, man. Like, just think about it. So we're not turning our back on nobody. We just, don't want to go to war with people.
Right.
And even though Obama made mistakes with the 7 interventions, him not going to Syria, doing the Iran deal was good, was important, and Trump could end up fucking it all up.
Yeah.
But I don't know. We'll see how this goes.
Most likely. I think it most likely will. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Shoot. Thanks for the call, man. I think he's most likely going to mess up the Iran deal because to them, that's the thing to do. Apparently, right? That's the way to show strength is to never ever do something smart if something smart looks weak. So to them, bluster equals strength, when in actuality, diplomacy could be stronger than. So it's a good possibility. It's quite a real possibility that they'll go in and just mess everything up. 857-600-05. Actually, let's hold up on the calls. Where I see Dwight Bullard is trying to get through, and I'm having a hard time connecting with them. Let's see. Yeah, I want to make sure we get that interview on the books. But yeah, great call. 857-600-0518. And we'll just shift gears really quick and talk about another story while we wait on Dwight Bullard, and so we can have that conversation. But while we're doing that, while we're taking a pause, this is actually a good spot to discuss Donald Trump's revelation, I guess. He said yesterday was a revelation that he was going to let everyone know that he is, some major breaking news. And the major breaking news is that he is going to not, he's not going to have a regular press conference with Americans. He's going to, with the media, Donald Trump is going to use Twitter for all of his major announcements. And then I saw a piece from the AP who titled it, "Trump is going to boldly use Twitter." Whatever the hell that means. What the hell does that mean? Boldly, like I boldly use Twitter. I go in and just try to cut throats anytime it needs to be cut. That's boldness on Twitter. Isn't really something that's laudable, right? But anyway, I digress. So really, what this is, and why this to me signals that the next 4 years is going to be nothing short of unconventional warfare, political warfare with the Trump administration. This is an attempt to circumvent any requirement of Donald Trump to answer questions from the press. Now, we're going to operate this conversation on two wavelengths. Number one, there's a problem with our press to begin with. Our press, our media, in so many ways, sucks ass. The best example of how horrible the media is with this Russia thing. The media is quite literally the only institution large enough, strong enough in America to demand evidence from the government. And instead of taking this Russia thing, the Russia hack issue, to demand evidence from the government, they've run into their political corners and their ideological corners and just pounded propaganda from their perspective. So our media has failed us. So I say this, and I give you this entire conversation about Donald Trump trying to circumvent the media, fully aware of how raggedy our press has become. However, this does not give Donald Trump a free pass to just do whatever the hell he wants to do and say, from his perspective, the media sucks, but for a totally different reason that I think the media sucks. Donald Trump thinks the media is ridiculous because they are not fair to him. Bitch babies have to have all the safe space, and, they have to make sure that no one says anything harsh about him and his feelings, and make sure that nobody shows a picture of his double chin. That's why Donald Trump hates the media. And so he's circumventing the media for another reason, which is because he doesn't want to answer questions. This is such a draconian, authoritarian style tactic to shut out our press. As crappy as our press is, to shut them out is quite the dictatorial move. And it shows us exactly how different the next 4 years is going to be. More importantly, how dramatically different we have to fight against his agenda and fight against what he's doing. Not to say that we could have depended on the media before, right? Because the media dropped their adversarial nature for Obama. The right-wing media picked up conspiratorial nature with Obama. Instead of addressing real issues, they focused on Benghazi. Instead of focusing on real issues, they focused on the birth certificate. So it got complete. And then now the entire world has flipped upside down. And whereas the media could be really addressing Donald Trump substantively, They're instead, the left-wing media, or the quote-unquote left-wing media, they're doubling down on stupid with this Russia propaganda. I get that our media is weak, and I get that the media is not going to be our salvation, but do you realize in the absence of a press, a strong press, we will get no answers. There will be no accountability except for whatever people can hack and release. And we've seen some of the biggest, I'm about to get in trouble here. We've seen some of the biggest organizations that do release WikiLeaks. They probably are not going to be as prone to, because they want to get some type of reprieve from Donald Trump for Julian Assange. I could be wrong. May have to, maybe 4 years is a long time. Maybe year 3, they'll be like, okay, Donald Trump isn't going to do anything for us, so let's go after him like we did the Democrats. Maybe, but until such time, we're going to be faced with a Donald Trump administration that not only circumvents the press, but is not accountable to anybody, perfectly sealing their hermetically sealed bubble. So this isn't bold. This is what you do when you're unqualified and you can't answer questions. This is what you do when you don't want to be held accountable. This is what you do. And yes, I get it. And everybody, I know there's going to be at least 20 people who say, yeah, well, the Obama administration wasn't at all transparent. Yeah, but you know what? They had press conferences. And if there was a shortcoming, it was in the press. The press could have hammered them. The press could have did their damn jobs. There's a difference between the press not doing their jobs and the press not even having access to do their jobs. So maybe this is good for the media, but it's definitely not good for America. Maybe this is good for the media, and maybe they'll realize, or the flip side of it is, let me finish one thought. Maybe they'll realize they have to treat Trump in an adversarial fashion. And wishful, naive thinking would say, well, they'll carry that adversarial nature throughout their existence, whether it's Donald Trump or whether it's Barack Obama or whoever the next Democratic president is. That's wishful thinking. But perhaps this will foster a more adversarial nature between the media and the White House. Or the other possibility is they could all just love access to power so much that they go and hang out with him for New Year's Eve and be like, oh, it's okay, Donald. It's all right. Just come on our show every now and then and say a couple of things, and we'll let you slide on not having press conferences and announcing everything via Twitter. So this is not a bold move. This is a cowardly dictatorial move of a small man who's not capable of standing up to pressure, who's not qualified enough to actually answer questions. This is what you do when you want to hide the fact that you're feckless and you're incompetent and you're moronic. So we're going to have to have an entirely different approach with Donald Trump going forward. And I'm not quite sure what that approach is, but it's going to have to be one of highly adversarial, never giving him an inch, never giving him an inch to breathe, never giving him an inch to get away with anything. He thinks Twitter is a safe space. That's funny, right? Matt, can you imagine a major policy announcement with, like 10,000 trolls responding before anyone else could respond? I mean, think about it. Think about what Vladimir Putin is really going to think about Donald Trump when he makes an announcement and somebody's there talking about how small his hands are, right? Twitter is not a safe space. All right, 857-600-0518. But that's what's going on with Donald Trump and his safe space. All right, so we're having a little difficulty, again, connecting with Dwight. He says phone can't call in. Wire. All right, so actually, the phone lines are wide open. We had a couple of callers that are cleared out, and so we'll get him on here as soon as we can. And until then, you could call in 857-600-0518. And then I'm going to cover a couple other stories. Definitely want to get this conversation in with Dwight because what's happening in South Florida is really a bellwether for what's happening in the nation. And it really has a lot to deal with the two factions that are growing and developing, or fully grown, not even developing, fully grown factions in the Democratic Party or on the left of the American political spectrum. And I think his race really signifies a lot what's going on there. So as soon as we can get him in, I have some people working with him, trying to make sure that he can get connected, so we can have that conversation. All right, in other news, Chicago over the weekend, there was a march. There was a march, and on the screen you can see a picture of Jesse Jackson, and is that Father Flager right next to Jesse Jackson? I believe that is Father Flager right next to Jesse Jackson. So in Chicago, they had a march remembering nearly 800 victims of gun violence in 2016 alone. They were all carrying crosses with the names of the victims, and you had family members marching with the names of their fallen loved ones. Most of these people died due to gang violence, and the year started off with even more murders. On New Year's Day, 2 men got into an argument and shot each other, killing each other, and the year ended on New Year's Eve with a 24-year-old young man getting killed. Chicago is not for the faint of heart, man. Chicago has, and we discussed this, I believe, a year and a half ago, with the slaying of a 9-year-old boy, a gang execution of a 9-year-old boy. And, you know, before I get into the politics of it, it's just the humanity of it, right? There's a serious problem in Chicago. There's a serious problem across the country of gun violence, and not just gun violence, but gun violence for the sake of territory and property that people don't even own. There will always be the rise of crime when there are few economic opportunities and when there's poverty. It's a statistical certainty, right? Where you have poverty, you are going to have violence. Where you have poverty and you have access to guns, you're going to have even more violence. And I know Chicago has strict gun laws, but Indiana is like spitting distance from Chicago and the gun laws there. And Kentucky is not even far. I mean, guns come over the border all day long, every day, right? So it's a combination of factors. This is a combination of gang violence and black-on-black crime. I mean, all the things that these white people want us to say that they just want, they like, oh, you never want to talk about it. But yeah, no, we do. We actually do. And this is not the first protest. Father Flager and Jesse Jackson's there every single Saturday. Father Flager's there every single day of the week. You have marches and protests all day long against the violence that's happening in Chicago. Now, here's the thing. What's Johnson? I believe, I can't think of his first name, but Police Superintendent Johnson, he blames this on an anti-cop culture. Right? This is a cop-out. This is a cowardly move by a person who's responsible for the protection of the city. It's not an anti-cop culture that leads to violence. It is a combination of economic factors, a combination of gun violence and the access of guns, and it's a combination of apathy from policing agencies. Are you telling us that your police officers are too feckless to go out and stop the gun violence? Because if that's the case, then why don't we have the National Guard in there? Rahm Emanuel. And don't get me wrong, I do know how many problems there are with the hyper-militarized policing agency going and being damn near vigilante. This is how you get people killed, by police. I get that. And I know the problem with bringing in the National Guard to stop citywide violence. However, 800 people died this year, and everybody's scattering to find some way to place the blame. The problem is it's happening, and everyone's pointing fingers like a bunch of babies instead of going in and doing what they can. What are the people going to do? What can the people do? Okay, you expect them to have to turn people in and to have a no snitch culture? There's a no snitch culture in the police agencies. How can you expect something from the people that the leadership of the city can't even do themselves? So it's both infuriating because real people are dying, children are dying, innocent people are dying. But at the same time, there's really no political will to actually do something about it because they would rather play rhetorical games with the lives of people. Oh, this is an anti-cop culture problem. No, this is a problem of, I'll give you my microcosm. I never forget back when I was in ministry and church and stuff and, whatever. I used to go out on the streets and talk to people on the streets in the worst neighborhoods of South Florida. And it was hilarious and sad at the same time that the most dangerous streets that I would ever walk down, I could look a block away where it was safe and you'll see police patrolling. But they wouldn't come on the most dangerous streets. You could see drug deals happening right in front of me as I'm walking by. And my little young, idealistic, silly ass was trying to, go up and talk to people and, come on, let's do this. Let's do something better with our lives, et cetera, et cetera. Police nowhere to be found. There's nothing that happens in your city that the police don't allow for. Not on the streets. We can't control people in their home, but in the streets, there's nothing that's happening in Chicago the Chicago police are not fully aware of. And you want to blame this on an anti-police culture? Then you don't need to be a police officer. You need to turn in your badge, turn in your gun, and turn it over to people who genuinely have a vested interest in protecting the community. Not people who want to sit back and just complain and sit back and just politicize every single situation. Chicago is a confluence of factors and forces that requires far more than someone as feckless as Superintendent Johnson, whatever the hell his name is, someone as politically devious as Rahm Emanuel. And it needs courageous leadership that's not going in to be vigilantes. And it needs economic opportunity in the poorest communities. And the problem is that, so this march was down the Magnificent Mile. If you ever walked the Magnificent Mile, it's actually Chicago is a beautiful effing city, right? There's a lot of wealth in Chicago. People talk about, oh, Chicago is X, Y, Z. No, metropolitan Chicago is one of the cleanest, safest, just beautiful places. But as soon as you go outside of metropolitan Chicago, you have abject poverty. You have real poverty. And when you have nothing but poverty, very few opportunities, people make their own opportunities. And it's usually at the barrel of a gun. So everyone who's complaining about, oh, where's black? Okay, so let's politicize it for a second. Everyone who's saying Black Lives Matter is nowhere to be found. Black Lives Matter is out there all the time. Just talk to Jamal Green, who's in Chicago protesting, getting arrested, protesting on behalf of not only police violence, but against regular black on black violence. Ask Father Flager. Ask Jesse Jackson, the Rainbow Push Coalition. See, people don't see what they don't want to see because then they'd have to change their weak ass arguments. People have been protesting the violence, and last but not least, and I hope this is a Dwight that's on the line. I'll grab you in 2 seconds. Last but not least, who the entire hell are people supposed to protest? Right? There's always this argument. Oh, Black Lives Matter wants to protest the police, but Black Lives Matter don't want to protest black on black crime. Like, do you know how stupid you sound when you say stuff like that? Do you know how dumb you? Who are they supposed to protest and petition? Are they supposed to protest and petition the gang lords, the gang leaders? Are they supposed to? Hey, listen. I'm petitioning you. Hopefully that the Fifth Street warlords will respect the life and property of the people in their district. It's not how it works. You can't protest criminals. You protest people with the legitimate use of power over you. So you petition your government to do something on behalf of you to stop the criminals. So even if Black Lives Matter never protested one time against police, against gangs, it's just completely illogical, completely. But I'm talking to completely illogical people. Not you, my audience. But the Blue Lives Matter, White Lie, all them other people. All right. 857-600-0518. All right. Let's take this call. Caller, you're live on the air. What is your name, comment, and or question?
Hey, Benjamin. My name's Josiah. Love your show, man. I want to say to the Chicago thing, I think it's utterly despicable the way these cop unions, you can't even have an honest conversation. You're right. You can't even have an honest conversation about it because they act like they're under assault. And
yeah,
it's patently absurd because obviously they have all the power. I love Chicago. I think it's a beautiful city, actually. Right. It's probably my second favorite city behind Boston. But the way they cry about everything, it's like they're under assault, but it's
like
it's
you have
totally
a gun.
ridiculous.
You have a gun and you have a license to actually use violence if you need to. What's there to complain about? What are you scared of? I don't get that.
And you look at these press releases and these bulletins from these cop unions, and it just reads like such crybaby bullshit.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, man. It's unbelievable.
It's terrible, and they have all the power, and they're totally unwilling to acknowledge that fact. It's like,
and that's the problem, because as long as now that they've gotten to this mode where they pretend to be the victim, and we're talking about the police officers here, they pretend to be the victim, then they have an excuse not to do anything and just blame it all. Oh, nobody likes me. I don't even let my 6-year-old son get away with that for 30 seconds. That type of behavior is not tolerable in my house. If for a 6-year-old,
right.
Why the hell would we have an entire policing infrastructure in the United States to say, oh, they don't like me, so I can't do my job? This stuff, go and be something else. I don't know what you can be, because everything is hard. If you think people not liking you makes your job difficult, then shit, don't get into politics.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I couldn't agree more. And yeah, but I don't mean to change the subject here.
Yeah, go for
either.
it.
But on the Trump thing, I'm about as far left as you can get. But the way I hear everybody talking about Trump right now and talking about just beating a dead horse of what a fascist he is and all this stuff, I don't think that that's the direction that we as progressives need to take. I don't believe any of this Russian nonsense. I mean, I do think that he was elected. I think we have to tone down some of this rhetoric, man, or else we just sound like him. He is a fascist. Of course he is, but I think we're kind of beating a dead horse here, and I think we have to take a little bit more of a diplomatic approach, as weird as that sounds. Like, I just keep hearing all this stuff about him being such a fascist. Yeah, of course he is, but you're not going to win anybody over with that. Everybody that thinks he's a fascist already thinks that already, and everybody that's on his side is not going to listen to you. Like,
You get nothing.
Go ahead, Amir.
do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I just feel like we should try to at least give him somewhat of the benefit of the doubt. Allow him to try to be a little bit presidential. You know what I mean? Like,
oh, well, he doesn't have the capacity to be presidential. But all right, hey, listen, thanks for the call. I will address your second point in a second, but I think we may have Dwight Bullard getting through. So let me try to connect with him, because that's one of the reasons I actually came in tonight, mainly to speak with Dwight. So. But I definitely will address that second point in one moment. All right, so let me try this again. We're going to try to connect with Dwight Bullard again. Let's see how this works. Let's do one more thing. Hang on. Yeah, I definitely want to have this conversation before the night is out, if it's at all possible. We're going to give it a shot. And okay, so nothing yet. You know what? Let's do this. I'm going to call him on three-way. We're going to keep trying. I've got plenty to cover tonight, so hopefully he has time to let us work this out, and then we'll get back to him. All right. So to address the caller's last point, I want to address the caller's last point. Should we give Donald Trump an opportunity? Opportunity to do what? He's clearly shown that he wants. Well, actually, let me start with what you first said. The rhetoric. I don't need hyperbolic. I agree with you. I don't need a whole bunch of hyperbolic rhetoric to make my point. I just think it's not hyperbolic to call him feckless and a buffoon, because he's clearly demonstrated that he is both feckless and a buffoon, right? So I don't think that's hyperbolic whatsoever. I think that he has shown that he has an agenda that should not be given an inch whatsoever. I mean, he's made it clear. Look at the people he's appointed. He's made it clear that he intends on gutting the tax coffers. He intends on building a wall. He intends on deporting even more people than Barack Obama already is. He intends on doing all these things that is detrimental to America as a whole. So I honestly don't think we should give him an inch to fucking breathe, ever. Not a day. That's number two. Do we have to just, here's the thing. Resisting Donald Trump, and we'll talk about the resistance in a minute. Resisting Donald Trump should be more than just talking about it. And I think maybe this is what the last caller was talking about. They shouldn't just be out there talking and tweeting about it, right? There actually needs to be a lot of organizing that takes place. People need to organize. People need to get involved. People need to join whatever political organization, whether it's a political party, a third party, a democratic socialist, whatever you're going to join, but get involved to do something. Don't just limit your political participation to resisting on Twitter, right? And to a bunch of hyperbolic language yelling that he's a fascist, because the call is right. If people don't think he's a fascist, chances are they'll never believe you that he's a fascist. Right. So just yelling at them on Twitter and on Occupy Democrats and all that kind of crap, it's not going to help whatsoever. Getting involved is what's going to help, which is one of the things I want to talk about when we discuss the resistance versus the rebellion in a minute, because there has to be actual action versus just a bunch of empty words. And see what I'm doing here. This is just part of what I do. Like like the Progressive Army is growing like an actual force to fight back against Donald Trump. Right. So our actions, like you come here and you listen and you talk, just let me, this is like going to church and get energized to go out and fight. Right. Come here, get what you need, go out and fight, and not only fight Donald Trump, but we'll talk about we also have to fight neoliberalism. We have to fight on two fronts simultaneously. So, and to that extent, I agree with the caller that no, just talking a bunch of hyperbolic rhetoric isn't going to do anything. But we actually have to do something. You actually have to go out and fight this battle in your own way, and the most effective way. Well, let me. This is very serious. The most effective way is to get involved locally. Right? Most of us as individuals, we're not going to be able to fight back against Donald Trump as an individual on a national level. But you as an individual can make all types of changes on the local level. And where you may not be directly fighting against Donald Trump, and you may not be directly fighting against neoliberalism, on the local level, you can fight against the rabid insurgency of conservatism and neoliberalism right there on the local level. So a lot of us look at the national level and say we want to fight there, when in reality it would take years. It's taken me 2 years to get the modest platform that I have, right? It would take years for you to get the power that you need to fight on a national level, when the local level is just sitting there waiting for you. They need you. They're desperate for you. And I don't care if it's the local Democratic Socialist, local Democratic Party, local Green Party. I don't care what it is. Get involved locally and fight both Donald Trump as well as neoliberalism. All right. Thanks for that call. Actually, it actually put some things together. All right, folks, I'm going to try something here. Hang on. I don't know if my Spreaker audience, if the internet radio audience is going to be able to hear Dwight, but I think I have a way to get him connected. And so we're going to try that. All right. Hold tight 1 second momentarily. We're going to try our best to get him connected via Google Hangouts. We're going to try. If this doesn't work, we'll keep trying. We still only have about 10 minutes left, but we're going to make it happen. So just buckle up. Here we go. Let's see. And let's see how this works. Let's test something here. All right. Testing 1, 2. Let's see. David, I think I have David online. David, you there? David. David, can you hear me? David, I think I have David online. David, you there?
No.
No, actually, I do have you, David. You're there. Can you hear me? Okay, so no, that's not going to work. Okay. I want Dwight, if you're listening, just call the phone line, 857-600-0518. We can get you in. I'm not sure why you're having a hard time getting through. Other callers are able to get through. Just call directly. Don't worry about Skype. Don't worry about anything like that. Just use your cell phone and call 857-600-0518 while we try to get you connected. No idea why that's happening tonight, but that's all right. stuff happens, and we'll make this work. All right, so a couple of other stories while we keep working on. Oh, okay. So he can't call in. Okay. All right. Well, we'll keep on working on it. We'll let my team on the background keep working on it, and I'll just keep covering. So here's an interesting story that I did want to cover. This is actually a very fascinating story. India's Supreme Court ruled on Monday. This is actually a huge story. That candidates for political office cannot appeal to voters based on the basis of religion, caste, community, or language. The Supreme Court argued that India's constitution calls for fundamentally secular elections. And a majority of their justices ruled that elections won on religious or caste-based appeals by candidates or their proxies could be declared null and void. All right, so if you're familiar at all with the caste system, it's like class warfare that is absolute. You're born in a certain caste or class, and you're unable to change. Wherever you're born, that's quite literally, you're going to die in that caste. And this has been historically a part of their culture for, forever. So this seems like an impossible task, right? And this is one of the things that many people are saying, that this is something that India is not going to be able to actually control. But three of the justices they argued that such topics were, quote, constitutionally protected free speech. Now, this is amazing. So it's like coming to the United States and saying that you can't make a populist-based argument. Or it's like telling Republicans that you can't argue based on Christian conservative, Judeo-Christian values, right? As frustrating as it is to have to deal with that every election, it's their constitutional right in the United States to do so. And I'm quite sure that the elite of America would absolutely love to never have to have an economic populist come along and actually make those type of arguments. So it's akin to that. But this is something that the Supreme Court held up. And so obviously it is something allowed by their Constitution. From the report, it said the ruling came as India prepared for a wave of assembly elections in 7 different states. A journalist said on Twitter, an Indian journalist said on Twitter that according to this ruling, the majority of those in parliament should lose their seats. And other commentators shrugged it off as impossible to put into effect. Political movements based on identity have led to a major social change in India in recent decades. Lower caste leaders have swept to power, promising to right historical injustices. So that's the deal. That's the deal, right? It's impossible to change the system for people in lower caste if you're not able to organize the people in lower caste based on the fact that they're lower, they're a part of a lower caste. And so they've essentially neutralized any type of populism in India, and they've bulked it together with removing religion out of their elections so that it could be a secular election. I'm curious as to see how they're going to implement this, but this is definitely a giveaway to the elite of their society, who no longer have to worry about populist movements based on what caste someone was born in. So the question is, what are they going to run on? And two, are they even going to be able to implement this? Okay. We're going to try this again. I'm going to try, one thing I'll always do is I will keep on trying. So let's try this and see. I think I have my producer online. David, are you there?
Yep.
Okay, David, do we have Dwight on the line?
Okay, we're working on that.
Oh, we're still working on Dwight. Okay. All right, so we'll keep you guys working. We may have to, I'm not quite sure why we can't connect. Dwight, I apologize for your time being wasted, but we'll, if we can't get it in this hour, we definitely will keep working on it and try to record it, and then we could just let everyone else know what happens. So we'll keep trying after the fact. So while they're doing that, and then David, just give me the signal on Twitter once you guys are ready, or if you guys are ready. Let me open up my Twitter chat to make sure. Okay. The last thing I want to talk about while we work on that is this. So there is a hashtag the resistance. And I talked about it a little bit with the caller that called in. And the resistance is, it's a mixture of several things. This is number one, it's a resistance against Donald Trump. The resistance is basically it's two things. It is the program that Keith Olbermann runs for GQ, right? His webcast program where he gets on and he rants. You know, I like Keith Olbermann. He's just full-blown propagandist at this point, at least with regard to Russia. He might be solid on other things, but with the Russia story, he's completely lost his effing mind. But that's the resistance. And then you have this rebranding. It's actually a marketing thing. It's actually a movement by the same neoliberals who brought us Trump, the same neoliberals that America rejected, the same people who made the wrong calculations in this election. They're trying to be the leaders of the quote unquote resistance. And here's the problem. They didn't learn anything. They just changed their name. And that's a problem. That's a huge problem, because how and why would we expect the same people who brought us Trump, because of their hubris, who didn't believe that they needed progressives, who outright fought against progressives, how and why would we believe that they are capable of actually leading a resistance against Donald Trump? Not only are they incapable of doing so, why would we believe that they have something in league with us? Because they don't. If you look at Andrew Cuomo out of New York, he just vetoed legislation that allowed poor people to have legal services. This is a Democrat who has taken an action directly adverse to not only the working class, but the poor. And the only reason I bring him up, because I want you to understand that, and this is something that Corey Robin from, he's a professor, but also I know him from Twitter. He said that, you know, when people say that there's no such thing as neoliberalism, or it's just a word that progressives throw around, you look at Andrew Cuomo. It's a perfect example of this faux progressivism that's actually neoliberalism, that has no desire to actually change the systemic nature of poverty, the systemic nature of oppression in the United States and abroad. I mean, Andrew Cuomo, yet again, is a perfect example, who said that anyone who boycotts, divests, and sanctions Israel, we are in New York are going to boycott, divest, and sanction them. So in other words, not only is he an economic neoliberal, but internationally, he's got no regard for progressive movements. And I bring him up in the context of the resistance because he is part and parcel exactly what these people are and what they stand for. So not only are they incapable of fighting against Trump, because in their minds, fighting against Trump means singing nicer songs in their car with Cory Booker and appealing to the young folks and being hip for the young folks and tweeting. That's being really angry when you tweet, right? And using all caps when they tweet. That's, to them, that's their resistance. So not only are they feckless, but even if they were effective, they don't represent what we represent. And so it's cool now. Don't get me wrong. The resistance I do marketing. The resistance is brilliant in terms of marketing, because you would almost forget that Neera Tanden is one of the people most complicit in the rise of Donald Trump. And here she is, a part of the leadership of the resistance. You would forget that these people who made all of these dumb predictions and all of these mistakes, the people who thought that Hillary Clinton didn't need progressives, the people who thought it was okay for her not to campaign in Wisconsin, you would actually think that this wasn't them, but this is them. These are they. These are the same people. And they are not only feckless, but I don't want them even if they were effective, because they don't represent what we represent. And I said all that to say this. We as progressives must absolutely fight on two fronts simultaneously. We must fight on two fronts simultaneously. We cannot sit back and allow Donald Trump to do whatever the hell he wants to do because we have this twisted sense of the enemy of our enemy is our friend, and somehow Donald Trump is going to do something good for progressivism. Please get anybody who's telling you that, or anyone who's soft pedaling that, anyone who is tacitly saying that, they are not a friend of progressivism, because Donald Trump has shown with his, I knew it before his appointments, but with his appointments, Donald Trump has shown that he is 100% the enemy of progressives. So we must simultaneously fight against Donald Trump, and we must rebel against neoliberalism. We must overthrow them. We must get them out of power. We must get them out of political power. We must get them out of activism, but they don't really do much. But we need to get them out of those halls. We need to get them out of media power. We need to shut that shit down. And we cannot be absent for either fight. This is a perfect example of the enemy of my enemy is nothing more than my enemy. And our political rivals in the next 4 years are not only neoliberals, but also Donald Trump. Donald Trump must be opposed at every stop, just like we must oppose neoliberalism and third-wave Democrats. We have to fight both and. And I get it. I get a lot of people aren't. And this is not slamming anybody, because I know how difficult it is to shift gears. A lot of people are not able to shift gears and do both and, because you've invested so much energy, you've invested so much research, and you expended so much of your life force fighting against neoliberalism. I get it. And so it becomes difficult to lift your head up and say, oh, shit, now we have to fight neoliberalism and conservatism. But yes, we have to. And if we don't, then we are complicit with the rise of conservatism, which is neoliberalism on steroids. You cannot tell me that you 100% hate what neoliberalism stands for when neoliberalism stands for X, Y, and Z, and conservatism stands for X, Y, and Z squared. You can't tell me that you oppose neoliberalism and then don't do anything to fight against Donald Trump and his conservatism. You can't. It simply does not work. It either signifies that you are you're a civil libertarian or you're a libertarian, and that you have some intersection with progressivism and you're not really a progressive, or it tells me that you're not ready to fight on two fronts. But we have to rebel on both fronts. We have to rebel against the third way DLC Democratic Leadership Council control of the Democratic Party, all of the residuals of Clintonism. We have to fight against it, but we cannot be absent and not fight against Donald Trump, because if you don't like Hillary Clinton, if you didn't like the third way Democrats, if you don't like what they're going to do on the economy, you don't like what they were going to do to the environment, you don't like what they're going to do on the international stage, then how the bloody hell can you not fight against Trump? So I'm putting a call out. I'm putting a call out to all those people who are capable and willing to fight on both fronts, both against Donald Trump as well against neoliberal control of the left. I'm not even saying neoliberal control of the Democratic Party, because I don't give a shit what party you work for. I'm saying the neoliberal control of the left. Neoliberals are incapable. They're feckless. They're too worried about their latte being made incorrectly, right? And they think they're leading a fucking resistance from Starbucks. So not only are they incapable of fighting against it, but even if they could, we don't want what they are selling. So the rebellion has to be against both Donald Trump as well as neoliberalism, and that's the only way we are going to move progressivism forward.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog, join the Progressive Army, and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. It's Ben Dixon! If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.
Consider becoming a Patreon. Go to www.patreon.com facebook.com/the BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.